Hello, everyone. Welcome to Survivor Talks with Mike. Today we'll be going over the first episode of season 41. This is going to be a sort of podcast discussion type video. So if you want to tab out to something else, go right ahead. 1.5 times speed also works pretty well with my voice. And we'll just get right through. We'll do a recap, review of the episode, talk about the tribes a little bit, and make predictions for where the season's going to go, who's going to do well. The new season, it's been a while since the last one. It's a lot different. Right off the bat, Jeff reintroduced everyone to the new season and the new changes. He shows us new twist that he's adding in and where he's hiding it in one of the camps. Welcomes us back from the COVID break kind of thing. The castaways are brought in. A lot of them get their first confessionals. I'm not going to go through every single castaway, but all of them that get an intro confessional are Evie, Danny, Tiffany, JD, Voce, Shan, and then some get some shorter confessionals. Sarah, Deshawn, Erica, Xander, and Jeannie. The castaways are divided into three tribes: Yasa Yellow, Luvu Blue, and Ua Green. Right at the start, Jeff asks them about his "Come on in, guys" catchphrase, and asks if anyone has an issue with with him using "guys" to refer to all of them. And no one had an issue at that time. They even asked Evie what she thought of it, and she said she was perfectly fine with it. And then they get started onto the first reward challenge, or the marooning, where each tribe had to find 6 oars on the boat and jump out into their own individual boats and row towards shore and back. The Luvu tribe gets out onto their boat the quickest, but they forget to unclip their anchor and barely move. The Yasa tribe can't find their 6th oar and never leave the opening. And the Ua tribe goes through the challenge without any issues and win pretty easily. I felt pretty bad for the Yasa tribe. They were in yellow, and there was a lot of yellow on the boat. And where their last oar was hidden was kind of under a yellow net. So it made it tough for them to find that. They kind of had a disadvantage compared to the other teams, it seemed like. But the Ua tribe gets immediate access to all their supplies, their machete, their pot, their flint, while the other tribes have to go to their camp without those supplies immediately and have to do another challenge to gain access to it. So the other two tribes are introduced to this new twist, the Savvy versus Sweat challenge. They each get a choice to either do this Savvy challenge, where there's a pattern with a bunch of triangles, and they have to come to a consensus of how many triangles are on the pattern. They only get one guess at it, so if they mess up, then they don't get their supplies. Or the other one is to do the Sweat challenge, where they have 2 members of their tribe have to carry pots around the beach, collect water, and bring it back and fill up a barrel. And they have to get 2 barrels filled up by the end of, or in 4 hours, I think it was. There was an hourglass that they had to wait for it to, or get it done before that emptied out. And both tribes end up going with the Sweat one, seeing that it was a for sure way of getting it. Whereas if they messed up on the Savvy, it meant that they wouldn't get it. I don't know that I would agree with going with the Sweat one, but it seems likely that they would have gotten it wrong, considering how things went in the last challenge. So I guess Sweat was a good option. Voce voices that, or in a confessional, says that he doesn't want to do the Sweat challenge because he knows it's going to make them tired, and that's going to make it tougher for them in the next challenge, in the immunity challenge. But in his attempts to not seem too eager to not do it, he ends up talking himself into being the one doing it for his tribe. And he says that he'd have to be the biggest idiot to be doing it. So it was a pretty funny, ironic moment. I really like Voce. I think he's a good narrator for the season so far. Um, and so for the Yasa tribe, him and Xander end up doing it. And then on the Luvu tribe, uh, they immediately say like, "Oh, we didn't even realize that our boat was still clipped to an anchor. There's no way we're going to get the savvy one. Let's just do the sweat one." And Danny and Deshaun volunteer to do it right away. And while they're doing it, while the Luvu tribe is doing it, they take a break and hunt for idols, and they end up getting caught by one of their tribe mates, Nasir. And Nasir had said that like while they're doing it, they won't talk any strategy, but once he's seen them doing that, he brings it back to the tribe, and they kind of say like, "Oh, that was shady of them." But both tribes finish and are given access to their supplies. The next thing is a new twist where each tribe has to send someone to go on their own. They don't know what it's going to be yet. They just have to send someone on a boat. Uh, on the Luvu tribe, Danny volunteers once again. Um, Xander on the Yasa tribe, he kind of half volunteers and is half told to go. The rest of the tribe figure he's going to be honest about what happens, so they don't mind sending him. And then on the Ua tribe, they draw rocks, and JD ends up pulling up the black rock. So each tribe had a different way of sending their member. Um, they each meet up on an island where they have to go for a hike and get to know one another. At the end, they split up and they have to make a decision to either protect their vote or risk it. Uh, they go back. Danny outright tells his tribe what he did and that he protected his vote. Xander tells the Yasa tribe what he did, but he plays a little bit dumber. He doesn't talk about how it's the prisoner's dilemma, and he admits that he risked his vote. And then JD at the Yasa tribe, he kind of plays up himself when he's telling what happened, and he says that he protected his vote, but in reality he risked it. Uh, no one seems to believe him. Like we get a few confessionals of people saying that they don't trust him, that he rubs them the wrong way. I'm going to go more into this twist after the recap, so we'll get to that later. Next, we get the immunity challenge, where they have to go through obstacles and then load a sled with bags and clear this track of other heavy sandbags. Uh, then they have to push the sled through the track and lift it onto another track that they have to push up a slope, and then pull out uh, puzzle pieces from the bags that were on the sled and put together this puzzle. Ricard speaks out that he didn't actually like the use of guys when Jeff calls everyone in at the challenge. So they decide we're not going to use guys anymore. Jeff will just say, "Come on in," which I know some people are really attached to the traditional catchphrases, but it's one word being dropped. It's not really that big of a deal to me. Um, but I have seen some people online having pretty big negative reactions to this. And for me, I don't personally get it, but each person has their own opinion, I guess. Uh, so, as for on the challenge, each of them make it through the obstacles pretty easily. Once they get onto the track, Luvu misses a sandbag from the track, so they have to go back to the start of the track and clear that bag or put that bag back on its spot that it has to go on. And then they get to start pushing the sled through the track again. The Yasa tribe struggles pushing the sled up the slope, but they do make it to the top. And the Ua tribe is the first one to get onto the puzzle, but as they're doing it, they're missing a piece still, and it wasn't taken out of its bag. Um, and this leaves an opening for the other tribes. And then the Luvu tribe, who had the major setback, ends up beasting their way up the slope, and they get the puzzle together pretty quickly in order to win. This means that both the Yasa and Ua tribes go to the tribal council. So for the Yasa tribe, their candidates for who to vote out seem to be Abraham and Tiffany. Abraham wants to keep the tribe strong. It's an old school mentality, but it's not necessarily wrong because it seems like the challenges are a lot harder. Um, and he says that Tiffany is the weakest in the challenges. Tiffany is well liked, and Abraham is seen as a bigger threat. So she's going to try to use her social connections to uh, put the votes on Abraham. She also goes out looking for an idol, and they kind of put a goofy moment of her being right near the idol and not seeing it. But at tribal council, Abraham is voted out 5-1. For the Ua tribe, their candidates appear to be Sarah for struggling on the puzzle and JD for rubbing people the wrong way. Shan was arguably worse on the puzzle, but she's already ingratiated herself a lot more in the tribe, and so Sarah is made into the scapegoat for her. Uh, Tribal council is live. There's people whispering and trying to change their votes. Sarah tries to switch the vote from being on JD to being on Brad, hoping that they can all come together and vote for him. She feels comfortable and isn't going to try to protect herself. But in the end, they end up voting her out. Sarah receives 4 votes, including her ally Ricard. Brad gets 1, and for no apparent reason, Ricard gets a vote from Jeannie. We never really see any reason why that was. Uh, I don't know, maybe she just didn't like him. But so Sarah ends up going out. So let's talk about these new twists. There's the Savvy versus Sweat one. The Savvy triangle puzzle ended up having 51 possible triangles. Uh, I don't know which one was actually better for them to go with. I don't know if they would have had 4 hours to try to figure out how many triangles there was, which I feel like they should be able to, but with 6 people working on it, it's going to be tough to convince all 6 that this is the right answer. Like everyone's probably going to have different answers to it, and it's going to be tough to get them to all agree. And when they finally do agree, it might not be on the right one. So I understand going for the sweat one, but it definitely does make you more tired for the next challenge. But obviously, that didn't really affect the Luvu tribe, even though they did it. Um, Now, as for the protect or risk your vote, so Danny protected his vote, and then JD and Xander both risked their votes. Um, I'm not sure if my math is correct, but I think if you protect your vote, there's a 75. Oh, I guess I should explain a little bit more how it worked. If you protected your vote, um, if everyone protects their vote, everyone just keeps their vote and it stays the same. If everyone risks their vote, everyone loses their vote. But if one person protects and 2 people risk, or 2 people protect and one person risks, the people that risk their vote get an extra vote that they can use up until the final 6, I believe it was. And the people that protected their votes lose their first vote. So I'm not sure if my math was correct, but I think if you protect your vote, there's a 75% chance that you end up losing your vote. And if you risk, it's the opposite. You get a 75% chance that you gain an additional vote. So everyone should rationally be risking their vote, in which case everyone ends up losing their vote. But that's not even necessarily a bad thing, because that could mean that you're like, yes, you lose your vote, but you're also taking a vote away from 2 other people, right? So it's not even that bad of a thing if everyone risks their vote. But in the end, uh, Danny protected, so he loses his first vote, which again, like, I don't even think that's necessarily that bad of a thing if you lose your first vote, because it's going to be the first tribal council, and normally there's enough of a consensus that your first vote won't matter. And then JD and Xander both risk their vote. JD chose to lie about risking it and says that he protects it. I don't know that that was a good idea. Obviously, no one believed him, so it already put him in a bad spot in his tribe. As for the other advantage, there was the one that Jeff hit at the start. That was the beware advantage. We haven't really seen it yet. Jeff hit it at each camp, and this was what Tiffany came close to finding. And they made a little funny moment where she's right in front of it, and then they showed a flashback to when Jeff was hiding it there. And then they also have a new twist, which is the shot in the dark. It didn't happen in this episode, but it was talked about a little bit. Each player can forfeit their vote if they feel like they're in danger, and they have a 1 in 6 chance of being safe at tribal council. It's a dice roll, I guess, for whether they end up safe. But they have to forfeit their vote for that. Which I guess if you're in trouble, you might not even need your vote anyways. Just go for the safety. So let's get on to the review now. Despite being a 2-hour premiere, it was packed. The editing was. They did some cool things, but also I think there was some issues that could have been, um, or some things that I think they might have edited in that won't be effective for the overall narrative. But we'll see once it all comes together, I guess. Uh, there was so much that they were trying to do that I think it could be a little bit overwhelming, especially for new viewers. All these new twists and new ways of telling the story. I did like that they showed a lot more flashbacks and helped introduce all of the characters a little bit more, or at least the most important ones, it seems. Um, I'm glad they didn't spend too much time showing us the sweat challenge or the hike. But it might have been worth showing a little bit more of what they talked about during those challenges, if they did talk about anything, just to get a little bit more character development between the castaways. Uh, that's the major thing about this episode is that we get to know a few players very well, but then there's some players that we don't really get to know at all. Um, it makes it seem like they either won't be important to the season or they expect everyone to have read the player bios before the season. The episode is fun and fast paced enough that it's still good, but I think they maybe are trying to do a little too much in one episode. I feel like a lot of these ideas for these twists are good, but throwing all of them into one new season at once might be a bit much. Maybe if they had done one new twist this season and then next season add in another twist as they went on, that maybe would have been better instead of all these new things at once. Um, I really like some of the cast with a couple of really good cast members on each tribe. Yasa had Voce and Evie, who I really liked. Ua had Shan and Brad and Ricard, who I really like. And Luvu has Danny and Deshawn, who are a lot of fun. As for the two booted players, one we got to know pretty well, and the other we didn't. Abraham, we barely seen anything from, and he seemed like other players we've seen before, so he's not a major loss. But if him being gone hurts the Yasa tribe, we could see other players that I like getting voted out, which would be unfortunate. Um, Sarah seemed like she could have been a good castaway with a good story, and I thought she would have had a good case against JD, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. Um, Overall, I give this episode a 7 out of 10. It could have been better, but it is by no means a bad episode. Let's move on to my predictions. So this is the section where I'm going to read a little too much into the edit. CBS and Survivor are trying to show more diversity and inclusivity, so I do worry that some of these confessionals are just there to showcase that, and it might throw off my predictions a little bit. Right off the bat, we are given a hint to who the important players are, with 6 getting longer confessionals to introduce themselves, 4 getting shorter ones, and 1 getting the last intro confessional. Um, Before the start, the short confessionals were from Sarah, Deshawn, Erica, and Xander. We can already cross Sarah off that list. As for the other 3, Deshawn seems like he's mostly going to be an entertaining character, but probably not the winner. Xander got to play a big role in this episode, doing both the hike and the sweat challenge, so it makes sense to introduce him. He definitely has some tools to get far, but he could end up just being a pawn for someone else and not an actual threat to win. Erica, we didn't see too much from, but her tribe didn't go to the tribal council this episode, so there might not have been too much to show there. I'll keep an eye on her and how she does in the next episodes. The last confessional before the start went to Jeannie. It mostly seemed like a game on, let's do this type of confessional that makes sense to put there. Now for the longer confessionals, we got Evie, Danny, Tiffany, JD, Voce, and Shan. I thought that Tiffany was gonna Ed and JD were both getting the first boot edits, so I'll have to reassess them now. Tiffany, I still don't have too much to go on. She was an alternate casting choice that made it on last second, but they are still showing a lot of her backstory, being a previver by getting preventative surgery done to keep her from getting cancer. It's a touching story, but the lack of strategy shown with her and the slight goofball edit they gave her when she fails to find that idol makes me think that she isn't going to win. JD, on the other hand, is constantly talking about how great he is and playing himself up, but also that he was a geek, so it was hard for him. When he lies about risking his vote, they play the wacky music over top and show that nobody buys his story. He has also talked about other players that he likes, being Ozzy and Fabio, which they're great, but if your strategy is to win challenges to the end, it's not very likely to work out. Depending on how you count it, JD got the most confessionals, so that could be a clue, but I think he probably gets voted out for overplaying. Danny is the other player who gets a lot of confessionals. I don't really see him as a winner, as he doesn't seem to be too strategic. Uh, he got a lot of confessionals by being involved in both the sweat and hike, um, and also for being a former NFL player, which gives him pull for the show. He's a good leader for the Luvu tribe, but he likely goes out around or just after the merge. Uh, Now we have who I think are the three most likely candidates. Evie seems cool, and I think that her and the Yasa tribe will be the underdogs that could pull out the surprise win from small numbers. She is a Harvard student, but is hiding that, which is smart to downplay her threat. She also seems to have a good read on the other players, seeing that Xander was a good choice for the hike, since he would be honest about it, which she was right about. She could make a push for a women's alliance, as she already stuck up for Tiffany against Abraham, since she was worried. Um, she was worried that him wanting to keep the tribe strong meant that he wants to get rid of all the women. Uh, if not that though, she could end up working with her Yasa tribe mate Voce, who is so far the best narrator of the season, as I said. Voce seems to understand the game well, but hasn't been able to make things go the way he wants yet. But his early blunders might help him make some good relationships with his tribe mates. He did the sweat challenge with uh, Xander, so that could have bonded them. They already like that he sacrificed his body for them on that sweat challenge. So he has some potential there, and from his bio, that his preseason interviews, it seems like he has the potential to be a villain, but he hasn't really shown that in the episode yet. Um, but he seems like a smart player with a varied skill set that could do well. He seems like he's good in the challenges, but not so good that it'll make him seem like a threat. And he's smart, so he can do the puzzles, um, and he seems to be pretty good socially. Um, the player I think got the most winner edit from the first episode is Shan. It might be too obvious, so take that with a grain of salt. They might be putting her out as like the false one, or she could become the main villain of the season. Um, she also might just be getting a fan favorite at it. Um, she is focused on making social relationships and reading people when they're being honest or deceitful. The fact that she was given, or she was seen as the biggest part of the Ua tribe's challenge loss, and her name didn't even really come up for tribal council, tells me she's already trusted by her tribe. Uh, she also had a confessional where she explained a song that plays in her head whenever she's trying to play people and being deceitful, and they composed music to go along with it. And it comes up a second time later in the episode. I don't think they would compose a song, a theme song for just any player. So that tells me that Shan is important and will at least go far into the game. So right now, I'd say she's my favorite to be the winner, but along with Voce and Evie being the other ones. Uh, that's it for episode 1. I'm excited to see how episode 2 ruins all my predictions and what new twists might come up. Thank you for listening.